Hey, Deserving listeners, I thought I'd go back and rewatch the whole season and pick out the most important scenes and react again, knowing what we know now. Let's watch.
I would say I have feelings for Cole because when I talk to Cole, I'm smiling the whole time and he's giving me a lot of signs that he's into it. He could be the love of my life.
I mean, I think so. I hope so. Fingers crossed. So I've heard that you guys have been slacking.
For whatever reason, one of the things that I'm reacting to this second time watching the season is Colleen's statements during the season as opposed to some of the things she said in the interviews. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but they did edit that a little bit. It's hard to know what that means. I could see what she just said going one of two ways, where she's totally into Cole and it's only because Brennan shot her down or something. Or another possibility, and there are many other possibilities, obviously, but another possibility is that they prompted her to respond in a certain way and she's like, yeah, I mean, I could see it working with Cole. Keep that in mind and let's rewatch what she just said there.
I would say I have feelings for Cole because when I talk to Cole, I'm smiling the whole time and he's giving me a lot of signs that he's into it. He could be the love of my life.
I mean, I think so. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
I don't know. It's just always annoying when they seemingly edit things. I don't know if they just edited out a little bit of a silence or they took two different statements and Frankenstein them together, but she says that, I don't know, maybe he could be the love of my life. And then she says, I don't know, fingers crossed. So let's just run that and watch that little edit there.
Smiling the whole time and he's giving me a lot of signs that he's into it. He could be the love of my life.
I mean, I think so. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
You know what I mean? Hard to say. I mean, I'm hoping, honestly, that her post-season interviews will not be distortions or questionable, dubious. I'm actually hoping that we see stuff that indicates that what she said after the season is actually accurate. Because I don't know, I just don't want to think that people are doing those kinds of things. And certainly I don't want to say that people are being shady. The more I watch this, the more I'm skeptical of the way they edited it or the way I interpreted it at the time, because you know, the way they put these stories together, it's like Colleen gets shot down by Brennan. Then Colleen is now in love with Cole, and now she's shot down by Cole. And you know, the way they make it look, it makes it look the way that I think most people saw it.
Gracious. So Colleen is a psychic. You are by far the fun choice. We have the same sense of humor. Mm-hmm. We have the same energy.
I think that's a good sign.
I agree. But if you and I are to be married, we're going to have to go deep.
Yeah.
Is that something you're willing to do?
So here's the scene. It's going kind of how I remember it. Colleen is kind of giving subtle messages that she has him high on her list. She's like, I think that's a good sign. And he's like, yeah, me too. But, you know, we really have to go deeper to make sure that we're a good match. So let's see what happens.
What are you used to talking about? What's kind of your expectation?
I'm just not used to getting deep. I don't want to say I'm shallow by any means, but I'm comfortable with keeping things surface level and fun.
Yeah, I would imagine that would concern a lot of people. Not like it's this huge red flag, but that it would make it seem like Colleen isn't really into it, right? Because I think for a lot of people, at least mainstream Americans, I would imagine, want love to be deep. They want at least that to be a deeply felt experience and that it's not a superficial thing when someone says that they love you or they're into you or they want to marry you. And I don't know if Colleen is referring to that, but she's basically saying in romance and what she would hope to do with Cole is to always keep it on the surface. She says, I don't want to say shallow, or I can't remember what word she uses, but she basically then proceeds to describe that. Let's rewind that.
What are you used to talking about? What's kind of your expectation?
I'm just not used to getting deep. I don't want to say I'm shallow by any means, but I'm comfortable with keeping things surface level and fun.
And that's an interesting word, I'm comfortable, meaning I'm not comfortable with things not being surface level and fun. Yeah, I would imagine a lot of people would say, I don't know if that's going to work for me. I mean, if we were just casually dating, then that might actually be preferred. But if I'm going to marry someone and be with someone the rest of my, because there's so many implications from that, right? So you're saying that when you want to get into more deep topics with me, or if I want to get into some deep, like I want to talk with you about my fears and my aspirations. And when we start parenting, I want to talk about my worries about our children or something like that. Are you saying like you don't want to talk about, like you're not comfortable talking about that? That'd be concerning for a lot. I don't know if that's what Colleen is saying, but you could see in a dating situation Cole interpreting it that way.
Because that's who I am.
For me, like a marriage it's gonna be very deep, and like it doesn't mean that we wake up every morning talking about our most emotional things or some big heady idea or something like that, but it just means that like I mean I know for sure I don't want a shallow marriage relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this conversation again, knowing what we know now from the season and the interviews. So I think Cole is laying it out pretty easily for Colleen, if because it's hard to know if she was interpreting it right, but given what he just said, you could imagine that if Colleen just likes to keep things fun, but when Cole says this, she's like, oh, well, yeah, totally. I mean, if we're going to be in love, if I'm going to be in love with someone, I do want to talk deeply about that. He's clarifying, because, the way that she interprets it, or at least the way she narrativizes it in the interviews after the season is, she says, I didn't have any traumas, so I don't have anything deep to say. That's not what he's saying right here, right? He's not saying, tell me about the tragedies of your life. He's saying, if I get married, I'm not saying every morning I want to wake up and have these deep conversations, but I want the love and the relationship to be deep. Let's rewind that.
Things or some big heady idea or something like that, but it just means that like I mean I know for sure I don't want a shallow marriage relationship.
I don't know. I've never been attracted to that.
Okay.
I've never gone.
Yeah, this is a lot different than my memory. I don't know about y'all, but she basically is saying, I'm not attracted to you. I mean, she's not saying that directly, but that's the way one could interpret that. He's saying, this is what I want. And she's like, yeah, I'm just not attracted to that. It just isn't. And that's an interesting way to put it, right? It's not like, it's not my thing. It's like, I'm not attracted to that, meaning that not only do I not want to do that, but if you try to do that, I'm not attracted to you. I'm extending what she's saying, obviously, but you could see how Cole would interpret that way. Because my memory from what happened, especially upon hearing Colleen's recall of this, I was like, well, wait a second, but this is, it's a lot more, it's a lot different.
I don't know. I've never been attracted to that.
Okay.
I've never gone for that.
Well, it's different. She says, I've never been attracted, meaning maybe I could be attracted, but I've never been attracted in the past.
I don't know for me that I can do that in a marriage.
I mean, I want that serious relationship.
Yeah.
So I get that it's not super attractive to only be in those kind of shallow relationships, and I'm working on it over here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I gotta say right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. She's like, I'm working on it, but I don't know if it's going to work for me, essentially, is the impression I'm getting. And she's like, and that's all I have to say. So this is, even talking about potentially going deep is uncomfortable for me. Yeah, I would imagine a lot of people would be like, maybe for a fun, casual dating relationship, but not a long-term, deep, secure relationship. Security, I would say, depends on being able to go deep. And the way that she's framing it, she's just like, I don't want to do that. I'm not attracted to that. And I don't even want to talk about it. Now, I want to be clear. People can have their preferences, and there's a lid for every pot. So I'm not saying what she's saying is incompatible with everyone on the planet, but I would imagine it would eliminate a lot of options for people. Colleen can certainly have those ideas. And maybe with Matt, she has that. I don't know. The other thing is that it's quite possible and likely that Colleen's position on this is not some frivolous preference, but a result of traumas that she's been through. She claims she has experienced no trauma, so I have to take her word for it, but it's possible that she's been through relational experiences that she wouldn't term as traumatic.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no words right now just because I'm over here like wheels are turning.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to make sense.
Like what I'm feeling right now is like you want a deep marriage, but you're still like getting there.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am there.
Yeah, I would say of the breakups on this show, the reasons to break up, I would say this is extremely understandable. A lot of what we see are the reasons for breaking up, are harder to grasp. But this one, I think, it makes total sense. I didn't remember it being this specific. I mean, they're not being super specific, but he's being pretty clear enough about what he means by go deep, by going deep with people. He's talking about he wants a marriage to be deep. He wants a relationship to be deep. Now, maybe he could have elaborated and said, I'm not talking about deep things, but I'm talking about that I feel the depth of your care for me and that you feel the depth of my care for you. Maybe that could have helped her. I don't know, though. Yeah. I would suspect that there's some kind of trauma there for her. I mean, she seemed to be getting anxious. You could kind of see it in her body language. She stood up because she probably felt more tense, and I don't know. I can't tell that obviously, but there seemed to be some visceral discomfort with even discussing going deep. So another thing I'll throw out there, and there's no indication of this, and she's indicated otherwise, and I just have to believe her. But with people like this, if I heard this from a client, I would have an hypothesis that the individual had been severely traumatized, maybe if just one incident of significance when they were younger or ongoing, because when people have been traumatized, they learn through experience that as they recall their trauma, they have massive spikes in distress. And so they learn over time to avoid it, and then PTSD will develop potentially as well. And so they know that to even approach that topic will cause tremendous anxiety, potential PTSD reactivity, potential dissociation. And so they might, as a rule, avoid going anywhere near that, and will avoid talking about their childhood, will avoid talking about their parents, will avoid talking about past relationships or emotions in general. So I don't have any reason to believe that's the case here, but it is akin to that, the way she reacts.
I get that it's not super attractive to only be in those kind of shallow relationships, and I'm working on it over here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I gotta say right now. I
mean, there's another option that she's like, look, we're on camera. So if you want to go deep off camera, fine. But on camera, I don't want to, because I'm private in that way or something. I could see that at least being a factor in that.
Like what I'm feeling right now is like you want a deep marriage, but you're still like getting there.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am there. I can't see myself getting on a knee
with me.
With you. I just feel like something's off.
If I would imagine Matt and another, because according to the post-season interview, she says Matt was number 1, this other random guy was number 2, and then Cole and Brennan were 3 and 4. And it was no big deal to her when Cole and Brennan said no to her in the pods. And so if that were true, I would just imagine that in this moment she'd say, well, Cole was much lower on the list. I'm much more into Matt and this other guy as well. So yeah, it's a bummer, but really this helps me, because this helps me to eliminate people that aren't compatible with me. I would imagine that we would see a different reaction than this. I've already hypothesized as to other possibilities, like she just tends to cry more readily than other people. There's nothing strange about that. Or she is wrapped up in the moment, but I don't know. Certainly the way that it looked and the way that it was edited was that, I don't know what ranking this was, but it looked as though when Cole lets her down here, that it was much more of a loss than she lets on post-season interview. And again, I'll say again that there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't indicate that she's some sort of crazy person for eventually marrying Matt, because, of course, the surface level take while you're watching this in perspective is like, she would have married anyone, and a lot of people were saying that. Another way to frame it is that she just didn't. I mean, all of us have likely been rejected by other people before we got married to the person we got married to. So does that mean that we would have married anyone? This show just condenses it down, right? So it doesn't mean that her and Matt aren't soulmates or aren't meant for each other, or that her love for Matt is somehow faked. It doesn't mean that at all. I just want to be clear about that.
I can't see myself getting on a knee
With me.
with you. I just feel like something's off. I feel like you're looking for someone who's a little different than me.
Okay, that's different than I remember as well. He says, I think you're looking for someone different than me. He's not even really saying I reject you. He's just like, I don't think I'm good for you because you're looking for something different. That's a good way to put it, right? He's not saying you're shallow, I don't want to be with you.
Maybe I am a shallow person, then, whatever, or how you're reading me, but
Okay, so who knows if it's edited, and he did call her shallow, but he, in terms of the edit, he didn't say that, but she interpreted it that way. And you could argue that he doesn't even really see it that way. You could argue that he's like, look, I don't think she's shallow. I just think that she's looking for a guy that's just different. Maybe I'm the weird one. I like things to go deep. I don't know, maybe I'm kind of weird. So who knows what he would say or what he would think, but she said, you think I'm shallow. And then she's like, well, or whatever the way you put it. I think she's acknowledging, well, okay, you didn't call me shallow.
maybe I am a shallow person, then, whatever, or how you're reading me, but I know I'm not.
Peace out, Cole. Peace out.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen other people say no to each other or get rejected and react differently, where there's less hurt feelings and then less anger. And so, I thought Cole was being completely fair, and she's hurt, and thus I think getting a little hostile with him, whatever, Cole, see ya. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's essentially what she's doing. It's understandable under those circumstances, but I don't recommend that. If he's not being a jerk face, then I think just being polite. You can certainly say, hey. Now, if she feels that he wasted her time, but it certainly didn't look that way. He was really trying, seemingly, and so she's upset,
Another day, another rejection.
What did he say?
I don't know, he just kind of shot me down. I think he misread me, and he was just kind of in a way called me shallow. I think I took it wrong.
Okay, so she says, another day, another rejection, and that seems to be more in line with the way she says things post-season interviews. At least in this moment, she doesn't seem to be super upset about it. And you could see a situation where, at the very least, Cole wasn't number one for her, and she didn't have all her eggs in that basket. I could see a scenario where she has equal eggs in all four guys' baskets, and then Brennan, and then now Cole. It's like, wow, what if all the guys are going to say that about me? What if Matt and this other guy are going to say that I'm shallow? Does this mean I'm a loser? I think it also ties in to her insecurity that she talked about, how people will want to date her. She said because she's a ballerina. Who knows if that's really why they want to date her? And then they will reject her soon after that once they get to know her. At least that's the way she frames it. I doubt that that's entirely true, particularly meaning that she's assuming things as to what's happening. But especially in light of the way she's saying, she's like, yeah, he thinks that I'm shallow. He might, but there weren't any indications. He was pretty fair, I thought, in laying out like, hey, let's deepness, and then just the topic of it. It wasn't like they went toward a deep thing and she was like, I don't know if I want to talk about this, or she was the one that rejected him, you could argue, in terms of, she's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm not attracted to that. She was the one who used the word shallow and surface. She was the one who used those words. So yeah, I would really hope, for her sake anyway, that she doesn't, because this is deep to me. What she's talking about right now are her insecurities, and she's going to, in terms of my definition of what deep means, like when I'm talking with clients, and therapists will often talk about this with each other about going deep with clients. This is deep right here. It's deep.
Another day, another rejection.
What did he say?
I don't know, he just kind of shot me down. I think he misread me, and he was just kind of in a way called me shallow. I think I took it wrong.
Wow.
I don't know if I'm reading the situation wrong.
Yeah, and I remember that. 2 thumbs up to her for that. It's like, well, at least I'm reading it that way. I don't know if I'm reading it wrong. It's great that she has that question mark that right there. It's very differentiated and healthy.
Covered in quiet.
Yeah, she seems less busted up about it than what I remember. She seemed much more affected by Brennan, actually. So maybe Cole wasn't really super high on her list. Seemingly up there, but not super high.
When it's rejection and then rejection right after, of course I'm gonna feel, am I doing something wrong? He ended things. And I went through a whole mental breakdown a second ago. With Brennan and with Cole.
All right, so yeah, I could see this edging toward her narrative more, not entirely, but I think more, that she doesn't seem that distraught about Cole ending it with her, and her any feelings that she had could have been the majority because she was like, wait, am I going to always be rejected? Are all the guys going to reject me? Is everyone for the rest of my life going to reject me? Yeah, you could imagine that being distressing.
And I went through a whole mental breakdown a second ago. With Brennan and with Cole, they have said they don't see anything serious with me in the long run.
Again, the way she frames it, I guess that is true, but I think it's all centering around this schema that she's not worth it, that there's something defective about her, that she's not interesting enough or appealing enough in terms of her selfhood. I think that's how, I think everything's kind of revolving around that. And you could see how whatever trauma led to that schema, if it's even there, she could be protecting herself from realizing that schema by saying, I'm not going to go deep. I'm going to be pleasing to other people. I'm not going to go deep because if I go deep, that involves my feelings and that imposes something on someone else. And I learned from experience that because of my difficult relational history, that will cause people to run away from me. So you can see how it would be this self-perpetuating schema, which they often always are, that in order to avoid rejection, she's like, I'm not gonna go deep. But by not going deep, she's producing rejection.
How you doing? I was excited, but after my past 2 rejections, I'm nervous. I feel like they're just judging me as a super shallow person. I'm not saying I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the way it was. Cole never said you're shallow or super shallow. Cole said, I don't think I'm right for you. Now, you could argue people might interpret that as him being nice, but I don't know, that's what he said. And he never said you are bad because you don't go deep. She was the one that said, I'm not attracted to what you just wanted, what you want in a relationship, deepness. I'm not attracted to that. She was the one who said, essentially, I'm not attracted to you. I'm not attracted to people that want to do that. I don't want to do that. And I don't even want to talk about it right now. So I don't know what else to say. Let's talk about something else. And so she's framing it. It just points to a schema, an assumption, and a perceptual lens that everyone thinks that she's super shallow. And how interesting it is that she basically engineered that conversation, because there are so many different ways she could have, reacted. She could have been like, "Oh, okay. Well, what do you mean by deep? Do you have a question, like a specific question, or what do you want to talk about?" Like she didn't even say that. She doesn't even know what he meant. Just the word deep caused her to say, "I'm not attracted to that, and I don't even want to talk about talking about it. Let's talk about something else." So she definitely railroaded the situation and now is railroading the frame into this. So it does point toward a perceptual distortion and relational traumas that inform that. So yeah, it's interesting. And also Brennan certainly didn't really say that. Brennan was just like, what Brennan should have said, I think, looking back, especially now, is, look, Colleen, I'm super into you. You seem like a really great person, but I have to tell you, I've fallen in love with someone else. And if it weren't for that person, I'm guessing things would have worked out differently between you and me. But me and someone else, Alexa, have completely fallen in love. And don't tell her, but I'm planning on asking her to marry me or something along those lines. Then I think that would have been different. But certainly Brennan didn't say you're shallow, but she's calling Brennan someone who's saying that as well. And I think, didn't he just say, I'm just not feeling it, essentially. And it was a very surface level breakup. It didn't have any specifics to it. And so she's filling in the gaps with, I think, her schema.
Open up and be clear on what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. I will say, there's one guy who I the first couple conversations, it wasn't great compared to other conversations that I was having, but I was there's something there. I know there's something there. I want to find.
Okay, she could be talking about the mystery man or Matt. I think she would claim she's talking about Matt in this moment, so that's different. And, I said this before, that's all she has to say is like, hey, Matt, I had these initial conversations. I didn't click with you, but it must have just been something kind of off about our conversations. I clicked more with the other two, and then once they rejected me, it sort of forced me to go back to you, but I'm so glad that it did because you and I totally click. I can't believe that we didn't click in the beginning. She could say that and it would totally be in line with everything we saw on the show. Instead, she seems to be really trying to make up a different scenario than at least what seems to be evidenced by the show. Now, I want to be clear. It doesn't really matter. It's like, and really, this isn't the sort of content that I usually do where I scrutinize people in this way. I guess I'm just curious as a citizen about all this. I don't know. Is this interesting content? Because it feels overly scrutinizing of these individuals, really. But I am trying to use it as a jumping off point. So I'll do that now, which is that we all do this. We all distort. We all see things through our lens. And differentiation is the ability to, at the very least, draw a question. So specifically about breakups that you've been through currently, recently or in distant past, there's a strong possibility that your narrative of that breakup, especially if someone broke up with you, that it is distorted. And that there's a possibility, given your relational schemas that you see things through. Relational schemas, like they're screaming at you, your schemas are screaming. It's possible that you are painting the past in a negative way to support your schema, and it bolsters your schema. And it harms you because you start developing ideas about others and yourself that aren't necessarily accurate. So you can think about that for yourself. An exercise that you can do, just off the top of my head, is you could write down all your past relationships, again, particularly ones that broke up with you, and you could write out in a paragraph why they broke up with you from their perspective. Not from yours, but from their perspective. Why do you think, in their heart of hearts, why do you think they decided to not be with you? And that might tell you a lot about your schema, because especially if you really look at it in the light of day and you're like, well, is it possible that that's actually not really what was in their heart? It's only what I think was in their heart. And if you're friends with this person, you could ask them, is this why you broke up with me? Because it's possible that your friend who was a former partner would say, no, my God, that's not why I broke up with you. I broke up with you because, I don't know, it's possible that there's a much more helpful narrative to you that is more true than the narrative in your mind. You can think about that.
Hopefully, we're just gonna hang out and just kind of try to talk through things and see if we could kind of work on things. Mm-hmm. So she called me before she came over, and right when she called me, I heard it in her voice. I knew something was wrong. I knew exactly what it was. And she told me she was pregnant by the other guy, and that was the last time I ever heard from her.
Yeah, that'll do a number on you. Who knows the circumstances? We don't know her story, but we do see later in this season the product of that massive trauma of being shown by the world that you cannot trust other people when they tell you that they love you. That might not be true, or love means something different to other people. And to be not only cheated on, but then she gets pregnant by him, and then she leaves him. And they were together, I think he said 10 years, and they knew each other since they were kids, had been dating since high school. And yeah, that would just that tells you a lot about humans, about yourself, your worth, what marriage means, what love means, when people say that. Because none of us know. I mean, you can hear people say like, no, it's just that one person. It was just your ex-wife. She's particular. Everyone else, when they say they love you, well, for the most part, they really mean it. People can say that, but until you actually experience it, it's hard to believe. And that'll do enough. So the next time something comes around that will perturb his traumas regarding being cheated on and betrayed, then he's going to get very, very scared, and it's going to overwhelm him, and then he's going to scramble for a solution, maybe even resort to abusive behavior. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.